Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I know we have a lot of people here who are not in the business web practices class, and I'd like to thank you all for joining. Today's speaker is a Clark College alumni by the name of Troy Uyan. And Troy went through the web development program, graduated not too long ago, and he's now an employee of the Clark County government. So I'm not going to, tell you much more about Troy. That's his job here as a speaker today. So let's give it up for Troy Uyan.
Good on.
Okay, so thank you. Camera. I am very ill prepared for this. I did throw together a slide deck, but it's not very pretty, so it's more just a thought structure line. So not too much reason to pay attention to it. Yes, I'm Troy. I'm a government programmer. That's my official title. Our agenda looks long, but they're very short sections. A little bit about me, the early days, my county internship, the Clark.Gov project, a little EDM software called OnBase, and a general overview of training, some random things, and I do like the question time because I feel like if I ramble and you guys have something that comes up, I want to make sure to address that, and that's where we get more of the details out. So I'm 21. I am a Clark College graduate with the Web Development AAT program. I am currently a programmer analyst for the county. Primary responsibilities are a web developer. We're using Drupal 7 at the moment, and I am a backup system administrator, or system administrator for OnBase, as well as will be the primary workflow and eForm developer for OnBase. So those are my primary roles at the county. I'm going to share my experiences, thoughts, and advice. That's really what I think I broke it down to after starting my professional career, because 2.5 years ago I was at Clark College, so it's been an interesting couple of years. If you have to take notes, I'm sorry, I really am, because I would not want to take notes on myself, so apologies. Do you have to take notes?
Troy, is that assignment you still owe me?
Yeah. Yeah. JavaScript objects and methods, there you go. So when I first started thinking about what I wanted to do, I was two things. This is middle school or before. I wanted to do game development and graphic design. Those were my things. That's what I was excited about. When I was in high school, I did full-time Running Start. I did do graphic design and artistic theory here at Clark College. And when I graduated or finished high school and moved on to being an actual Clark College student, I switched to the brand new web development program that had just been created. So my last quarter of the web development program, I chose to do my co-op internship class at the then known as Clark County Application Services Department. That basically the software development and software support for Clark County in the kind of technology services umbrella at the county. So my responsibility there was building the mostly pre-designed framework for the new Clark County website. It was the first web system update that the county had in 15 years. They were still on antiquated Adobe Contribute authoring platform and static site generator. It was the first time they were going to see a database-driven main website and one that utilized a CMS for ease of authorship. It was going to be responsive, UX, ADA, all the acronyms. ADA as an actual legal requirement and not as a marketing term. So over the 8 weeks or 10 weeks, my primary task was building this framework. So my end deliverable was a 7-page responsive PHP framework. It showcased the variety of pages that you would have on the site, the home page, the department home page, the service page, all these other things. It was pretty, it was responsive, it was completely ADA compliant to the letter, and I used my Clark College skills. I spoke intelligently to seasoned professionals who had been doing this for a lot longer than I had, and I impressed them a lot because it wasn't just about getting something else to put on the resume. It was about building relationships, establishing a reputation, and establishing contacts that could vouch for my skills. That's really what I was looking forward to the most about that opportunity. The FaceTime was important because that's also how you establish reputation, gain relationships, and build contacts. I had multiple presentations to the application services management team, one that had the infrastructure services director in it as well. presentations to the Clark College web team that included an NVDA demo. That's a screen reader technology, so showcasing that ADA, showcasing, with mobile devices, showing the responsive. It was stuff that the county had never seen before. The county was on a table-based old website, so it was cool stuff. And I, at the time, was the only person in the entire county doing any development work for the Clark County site. So it was very cool. They entrusted me, an intern, an unpaid intern through Clark College, with a very high-profile project to do the initial code base. The fallback was obviously just chuck whatever I didn't have one of their other devs do it. But nevertheless, they gave me the opportunity to really frontline that code. At the end, I did have kind of when it was all wrapped up, a presentation to the county manager, which is essentially the CIO position of the county for non-elected department heads. So information technology does not have an elected department head, but the assessor is elected, the treasurer is elected. They're on their own in their own bubble. The county manager is the CIO of non-elected departments, and he's a big figure. So again, they entrusted an intern with FaceTime to the county manager and several department directors, key stakeholders, in a ridiculously high-profile project for the county that had a lot of exposure, political attention, etc. So they were actually interviewing for the job. The second week I was there, there was a web designer position that was going to be in the programmer analyst classification of IT, or application services. Had they found someone that second week I was there, I would have been screwed. There was no job there. That was the one posting, right? They did not find someone in that first round of interviews. So around week 8 of my internship, I had my interview for the second round of this position listing, and the very last day of my internship, I was offered the job at Clark County that was titled web designer. So why did I stand out? I think this was important. I had the rare opportunity to become a known quantity with an employer before they had to make a decision of comparison in an interview. So I gave positive experiences, I was very hardworking, and I had built good relationships with not only the team, but the management, the director, and even the county manager had personally vouched for me to my, at the time, manager. Or, technical knowledge. So I showed that I could go meet with a customer and solution problems and run a meeting that's not only fact-finding, but also talking about finding a reasonable solution that is easy for them, easy for us, and creates a cohesiveness of IT and a department. IT is an internal service to the county. It's all about our customers are the other departments. We don't directly serve the public in the way you might think. We really serve the other departments of the county. Community planning. So I showed that I understood database-driven web systems. That's really the way of everything, is database-driven systems and web in general, internet and databases. That's, if you understand those, if you can speak intelligently about those, you're going to go a long way in a development field. I'm sorry, I missed. I know we have a range of people. Can you guys yell out your degree programs? I know web development, web design,
computer support, web development,
computer support, web dev. Okay. Yeah. Showed that I can learn quickly and I was adaptable. None of the actual technologies that was used to build the site, I didn't have any experience with them until I got there. I had never used Bootstrap, I had never used Less, I had never used Drupal. I was on Foundation and SAS and WordPress, like the complete opposite for everything. So in less than 2 weeks, I had to brush up to speed on a lot of that and start working on the framework. And I showed that I could ask the right questions, but specifically at the right time. Because the biggest pet peeve of a lot of people is, I gave this guy a task, he got his first roadblock, and he came to me and asked questions. Everyone there is super busy, so I respected everyone's time. It was not about, just getting it done as fast as possible, so I need to involve people. It was a learning experience for me, and you definitely don't want to be that person that's, can't do a task by himself. So that was, I think, one of the keys that stood out. It was mentioned in my review for several things, that it's someone that, I was someone that you could give a task to or a project to, and they'll just go off, and we'll see you later. And I challenged Norm. So as an intern coming in, I think my second day I was there, I was shown the proposed design for the Clark County website, and I kind of tore it apart. Like, so this is something that shocked a few people, and my at the time team lead said, "I'm surprised you did that. You don't know any of these people. You came in right away and you started questioning and challenging certain decisions." He said he was surprised he did that, and he was also very excited that I did that, because it showed I wouldn't just take something and just roll with it. I would try and make it better. I would try to understand the back reasons behind something, and if there wasn't a good reason behind something, we'd find whatever that root problem that was trying to be solved with a design or a program, and get the best solution possible. 2 weeks later, I started. So I think had the last week of the internship, finals week, and then I was back at the county as a full-time employee. Leading up to the go live of the website, my tasks were finishing up the front end. That was template logic, less JavaScript, etc. Working with the various department directors, managers, and contacts to kind of, again, define, problem solve, right? What are they trying to do with their site? What kind of information? What's their audience? We have certain areas that are really focused on the ADA side, so their stuff got special attention. It looks the same from the front end, but they got a lot of special attention in their templating, which is the next bullet point. Solution, the information architecture. That was key, because the county, in their contribute site, had 1,700 pages, and they had over 4,000 documents, Word documents, presentations, etc. So there was a lot of stuff, right? So solutioning the IA really meant organizing that into a logical way. And it's a near impossible task, because whatever someone's going to the county site for, to them, that's the most important thing on the county site in that moment. So it's hard when you have, over 200 endpoints on your site to really decide what's most important. It's impossible, in fact. So it was an unwinnable challenge, but we did a pretty good job. And I had 2 presentations to the Board of County Councilors. The now 5 people that basically are the political embodiment of the county. They are the people that you potentially voted on a couple of months ago, new district elects, and this is the highest thing. The Board of County Councilors, being there less than a year and having not only 1 but 2 presentations, one of which solo led to the Board of County Councilors, did again 2 things. 1, prove to the department that I was going to be an asset, I was trustworthy, they could give something high profile to me and I wouldn't choke, I wouldn't mess up, I would be the absolute embodiment of professional and represent the department well. IT was not viewed very well at the time. We have a recovering relationship with the rest of the county after some bad years, 5-6 years ago. So new faces in IT were a big thing, and faces that could represent the department, a very big thing. And they gave me those opportunities. And CVTV or whatever the broadcasting thing, it's there somewhere, one of my presentations. And the coolest part for me about this project wasn't that it was a huge project, it was a revolutionary change, that there were big presentations. I was a trainer and direct line of support for over 60 web authors. These are non-technical people that needed to update the site or do what have you. And it was heavily, heavily political. None of that was really the highlight piece for me. They were all very, very important, but really the coolest part of this whole project is I got to write the very first line of code for this project. And that line of code has been run on hundreds and thousands of devices since this project's gone live. So that, to me, is really freaking cool. Bit of a segue going from web to the enterprise document management platform. Enterprise environment servers, not something I had really had experience with before I got to the county. The most server experience really I had was a shared hosting for the website and WAMP stacks on local machine. Was not really ready for the breadth of a enterprise level server environment. So we, for the county, for the web project, we have 6 servers. We have a production load balancer that takes unfiltered traffic and routes it to the correct app and DB server. Production app and DB, so the production app server is the one that's actually running Drupal, it's running Apache, that kind of thing, and the DB server is literally just running the SQL server. Same thing for the dev test environment. So dev and test are sharing load, obviously they don't need their own server stack, but the load balancer for dev and test is IP filtered. So our intranet that we call ClarkNet is IP filtered. I could not bring up the intranet from this PC. It is not in our IP range. So what happens is, however, we do have a production intranet, right? So unfiltered traffic would hit the dev test load balancer, and because we want the production ClarkNet site, we would actually route our request to the production app server, even though we came in through the dev test load balancer. So it's kind of cool crisscross thing. We have one environment that is publicly exposed through our production load balancer, one of our test environments. So that request actually comes in through the production load balancer, but it gets routed to the dev test app server because it's still a test environment. It lives on those other servers. The environment everyone knows about is clark.wa.gov. We have 12 environments total. Again, not something I was prepared for, really. Like, you dev your own thing, and maybe you have a local copy. There was quite a bit here when I first started. We have our main site, our DR site, our training site, which is a very close clone of production so that people can get in and learn what they're doing. And then we have 2 separate dev and test setups. Mainly because if we're doing strong module development or custom theming or other stuff like that, one environment to develop is not enough. And you know, we all sit in the same area, and one person takes one of the environments down and everyone looks at them like, really? PHP error, really? So that happens. Same thing for intranet. It's a little bit less on the ClarkNet side of things, but we do, again, have that same thing of running into each other. So the segue into enterprise document management, I just want to overview the server structure for this guy because it's a little bit of a beast. We have, for our production environment, an app server, 2 separate processing servers. These are all county-hosted VMs. Sorry, missed a thing here. I'm going to talk a little bit about cloud environments later on, but our production servers are hosted in Chicago via Rackspace, and our Dallas box hosts our dev and test. So what also happens when you have these IP filtered and non-IP filtered requests is you're sending it to a completely different area. These VMs aren't in the same location whatsoever, so kind of a neat thing for cloud computing. We have 12 VMs that we host locally at the county for OnBase, and OnBase again is enterprise document management, which we'll go over a little bit later. The thing's beast mode enough that it needs 2 separate processing servers just to load balance requests, basically. And each of those processing servers handles more nitpicky load balancing within themselves. There is a web production server and another production SQL server. On the test and dev side, they all have their own test, proc, and web servers, and they share a DB server. So these are 12 separate VMs that all of a sudden I was pseudo in charge of. Ow. That was my knee. All that is kind of mirrored. All those servers are for only 3 environments. So we kind of have a mix of having 6 servers for 12 environments, and then having 12 servers for only 3 environments. So kind of a flip-flop is very interesting from software that I had never had any experience with, obviously. So I want to talk a little bit about EDM because it is one of those enterprise-level projects that is high profile. It's can be controversial, and really this is where I really inherited the difference between the programmer title and the web developer title, because my roles for OnBase was a lot of system administration, software system administration, configuration and setup, software support, and these were all new technologies, new concepts, legal requirements, records retention, scan, store, retrieve. Never heard of this stuff before. And the reason I bring up this up is all the web development experience, the PHP, the JavaScript, putting all those factors together into a pretty website. That kind of forward thinking of doing your CRUD applications and stuff like that, that prepared me to handle this beast of an application. And it really is a ridiculously intense application. There's another system analyst that works with me, and I think she had a harder time understanding OnBase because she wasn't a programmer. She had done config setup and system admin before, but this thing was so ridiculously big that it really took that knowledge of what database-driven systems act like, what they behave like, what they do, and why. So I did run out of time to prep for this. So anyway, quick overview of EDM. We're talking about your core structure of objects really exists in EDM as well as a technical term. Something in EDM starts in a disk group, it has a doc type group, it has a doc type, and it has associated keywords. So really the core is those doc types, those actual documents. EDM is essentially about digitizing records retention handled electronically. It's really the heart of what e-government in a lot of ways is automated workflows, constituent interaction via the web, enabled line of business applications. So there's some systems that will not go away. We can't just replace them with OnBase, but we can store the documents in the OnBase database and the OnBase disk groups. So that gives us a central repository for document management, not 12 different systems handling document management, which we currently have. We can tap into web services, so dynamic workflows based off of Active Directory. So our Active Directory service houses your manager. So if anyone internal to the county were to submit a request through a workflow, we can do a web service lookup and see what their manager is and route like a DocuSign document to that manager. This is stuff that happens behind the scenes of just enterprise level workflows that the people who are interacting with it don't even know what OnBase is, or they don't know that they're using it. It's really that shadow killer in the background. And the web development knowledge really came into play because this thing is 1000% database driven. There are thousands of tables in the database. And I mean, I was like really happy with my PHP 2 database. I had 8 tables, but okay, you know, it's a little bit bigger. I'm going to skip the last thing. There is no beginning, middle, and end to this presentation. It's very ad hoc, so yeah, apologies. Training. I did want to talk a little bit about training because I greatly misappreciated what a training budget could do for me in my professional development after I got hired. And something I'm turning around, but I did want to talk about training because you are never done learning. One of the best ways to learn is to obviously do those projects, have those different things, and build those systems and solution those things for different customers. But your training and your professional development can be a lot more robust, and it can make you more skillful overall and more knowledgeable overall. So there are web conferences, like, again, I'm from the web side, so conferences like this are awesome because you come and sit in a room full of professionals who have been doing this for a long time, and you learn from them. And it's not just about the sessions, it's about the little sidebar conversations and stuff like that. You really get a lot from these. I learned a lot at WebVisions. DevZiner's up and coming in the Portland area, and I did not go to DrupalCon, but a couple of our devs that did go to DrupalCon gave a wealth of information back to the team in terms of what was talked about there. For OnBase, just wanted to overview this. There's huge conferences coming up. We just went to one in Community Live in Florida, so that was muggy. TechQuest is another one that's 6 days of hands-on labs with the application. 6 days straight, 8-hour days, hands-on labs. If you want knowledge about how to use the software, that's the place you go. Certifications are twofold. They give you a lot of knowledge about how some of these companies or different industries handle their stuff. One of the first things when I was hired full-time that I had to do was get a CJIS certification from the FBI. So that basically, Criminal Justice Information Systems, I think is what that cert is. It allows me to manage, handle, edit, and view applications that can retrieve criminal information from the FBI database. So that was something that gives you a lot of indication of how some of those, how the jail management system works. There's all these MSs everywhere. There's JMS, CMS, RMS, everywhere. So records, jail, all these management systems. I basically am certified to work on them without it being a roadblock later on. OnBase classes, the essay class, both the workflow classes, those are all 5 days hands-on labs. And I said it was a beast of a software. 15 days of certification training. And I guarantee I'd come out of that and still feel like this software was just too big too complex. And another thing that comes up again, once you start into an industry, any industry, you know, construction or whatever, one of the things for ours is records management is very important in terms of, you know, certain permits or employee information or stuff like that. It's prudent everywhere. But we have specific state records management stuff we have to do, so there will potentially be records management training for us down the line. This is something really cool that's specific to my environment, and when it was first given as a resource, I did not take advantage of it, and I feel stupid for doing so because some of the stuff here is awesome. Federal virtual training environment is unique technology and security training for government IT employees. It is put on by the Department of Homeland Security, and Monday I did a cloud computing security class, which was pretty interesting. So at the moment, the county hosts with Rackspace, which I mentioned earlier. We do that through a third-party vendor that helped with our implementation. But that vendor has said that they want to cancel their contract with us when it's up for renewal. They do not want to renew their contract with us because they are more of a plug-and-play shop, and they're not used to dealing with people that have their own developers. So they're cutting us from their team basically because we're asking too many questions. So we're switching to a platform called Pantheon, and Pantheon, again, is a cloud-hosted environment similar to what I talked about Dallas, Chicago, blah, blah, blah. Pantheon offers middleware, which is very cool, and middleware is essentially the layer of software that's sitting between your software and the server. That's kind of how I think about it. Our software that we're trying to do is our Drupal environment, our apps, our modules, everything for constituent interaction, you know, via the web is what our software platform needs to be. But we need to sit on that server in the enterprise server environment, like I said. So Pantheon offers a solution for us to clone environments, spin up new VMs, etc. from click of a button. Amazon AWS is an example of middleware. So, certified ethical hacker, that's something I would love to have on my resume. It's a lot of this IPv6 security, the difference between IPv6 and IPv4, cyber risk management, penetration testing, root cause analysis. These are all things that an IT professional should know, and these are stuff that I did not take advantage of when they first came up, but these would be great things, great knowledge to have to bring to my team, and also, you know, a great personal development tool as well as, you know, stuff to put on your resume that you have this knowledge. Online training, there obviously are a variety of online training sections. These are a couple that we use at the county. Drupalize Me is awesome because, again, you start working in a system before you've had specialized training about it, and then the specialized training is always awkward because you start at the beginning class and it's telling you stuff that you know, right? But then there's always those little details that you're like, oh, now that makes sense. So it can be painful to start in specialized training when you're already at some level of proficiency with a software or a technology or a language, but it can help. I think one of the coolest epiphanies I had was taking like a basic JavaScript book and reading the first few sections after I had taking the JavaScript class here and everything. And just the fact that the first 7 chapters had no coding exercise, it was just an overview of programming in general. And it was the most robust overview of programming I'd ever heard or seen. So the basic training, going back to basic training, but also getting that advanced training, because as soon as you pass the basic, it cones out, right? And you may be great at this section, but there's all this other stuff over here that you need to worry about. And you want to stand out in a resume stack. I guess that's my one of my things is, yes, there's a paragraph. I'll read it to you. I have a 2-year degree in web development, but when you go up against seasoned IT professionals from network admins to enterprise programmers, you need a little more than a single line item under your education to stand out. And other certs and stuff like that show that you have the skills to prove it. Again, I had a rare opportunity with being able to show my employer what I could do, but pushing for expert level is always funny because there's people that say there's no such thing as an expert in anything, and there's people that call themselves experts way too quickly. But what I would say is pushing for expert level knowledge is really understanding every place of that technology or that full concept that you're talking about. So being like an expert level web developer, I would say you understand not only HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, .NET, how they all play together, but you also understand the web server environment and stuff like that. You understand these different technologies, different concepts like MVC. You understand all of these things. Maybe you don't use them, but you at least know what they are. And the key that I like to say about people like programmers or web developers specifically is your job is not typing in the correct line of code. Your job is finding out what the correct line of code is. That's why you're getting paid. So there's that. So I was one of the people that finished the books in class. I found that very helpful because the nitty-gritty details or the stuff like that, a lot of times those are in those last few chapters of the book, and they can really start to kind of connect the dots or go that extra mile in when you're learning a technology or something like that. And the acronyms and concepts that are mentioned when talking with professionals. The first thing, when I came to the county, the thing that was constantly said was IIS, IIS, IIS. No idea what the hell that is. It's Windows version of Apache, basically. And that has become an absolutely prudent part of my job. But when I was first there as an intern, all I had done was Apache. So I don't know what this IIS crap is, or NGX. I don't know what these things are. And here's the other thing I mean, research the field. These are some of the things that come up on a day-to-day basis in IT. So content management systems, preprocessors, version control, SQL injection, understanding truly project management, because like when I was a freelancer, I was the project manager, the BSA, the programmer, when you're the smaller project team you have, the more hats you wear, right? And so getting to these enterprise level project teams, I didn't know what in the world a BSA was. It's a business systems analyst. And after that was explained to me, I didn't know what that person was doing until I finally realized, right, that they're the ones actually taking some of the responsibility that I, as a single freelancer, was doing myself, right? Same desktop administrator. For OnBase, there's desktop clients and stuff like that. Something that a web developer never really needs to worry about, right? You make your website, it's up there, they connect to it via URL, you worry about browser compatibility. Getting involved in the desktop administration side was interesting because I had no experience with deploying a desktop application to 1,700 employees. Not my thing. Enterprise environments. Very quick wake-up call was like what a staging environment is. How is that different than a test environment? Dev, test, failover. And again, some of the buzzwords that you hear, .NET, Node.js, IIS, these kind of things. And I do have a cool interview question because this is something that has come up several times. Why is it best practice to have the database on a separate server? It's open to the floor. Why is it best practice to have the database on a separate server? For web or desktop applications. It's actually universal. Bruce?
So maintenance for one thing.
What's that?
Maintenance for one thing. If you have a database server, chances are you're going to have another database server. You're going to back it up, and you won't interfere with your present web stuff, so your failover will be easier.
Yeah, very good. Anything else?
Security.
Security. Anything else? Accessibility. Hey, how's it going? So performance. Yes, you're splitting the load. That's why OnBase has 2 processing servers. It's ridiculous. It literally sits there and executes lines of code. That's what it does. The main reason that there's lots of reasons, obviously, but the critical reasons we see are these are all VMs. When you have, I'm not going to flip back to it, but I was mentioning, 12 environments, 3 environments, whatever. Keeping the database separate means, yes, the maintenance of it, database server images and stuff like that, those are separate. Web server images for VMs are separate. That means we can spin up and spin down VMs like crazy and not have to worry about our database server whatsoever. The other reason is security updates are sometimes different for database servers than web servers or application servers. And basically, you don't want them to conflict is really the best practice. It may seem obvious, but when you're doing your Uniserver on your WAMP stack on your own thing, you don't really think about that, right? And then you get into an environment like this where there's a separate app server, a database server, a load balancer. This server environment knowledge proved amazingly useful to me, understanding not only the current web infrastructure that we have at the county, but also prepping for the on-base thing, because the on-base thing is ridiculous. And again, my background and everything I wanted to do was web, but I got into an IT department, not a creative agency like I was trying to. So my thing had to shift, and these are things just in the technology industry in general, like a test environment being where you show your customers, and a staging environment being where you rest your deployment until a specified window of rollout. These are things that I did not know, and it helps you talk the talk, I guess, is my critical point. A very small random thing. I don't know why I want to talk about this, but I do for some reason, because it's kind of cool. We have something on our website called the Varnish Cache. Again, this is server-side stuff that I didn't know about, but it's a very cool thing. It allows anonymous users to Drupal or another CMS to take advantage of cached web requests themselves. Not just cached pages or resources, but the entire web request itself is cached. It's a utility that sits in front of port 443, so that's your HTTPS port. And it does create huge performance gains, because whatever spidering chain of requests that this, hitting the homepage, Clark County homepage, whatever spiraling chain of requests that creates, Varnish caches that entire thing as like stored HTML files. So we no longer hit the database when the next person hits that page, right? So again, performance gains, it's a lot less taxing on Drupal and the database, so that Drupal can serve pages that haven't been hit in the last 4 hours. This is a 4-hour timer. So again, just kind of a cool thing that I learned more about. It was always something that gets in the way because you're trying to test something and it doesn't update. So you're like, what the literal? Training and general knowledge. My key is it does make you more intelligent about your field. It makes you a more skillful worker. It makes you more marketable when you switch jobs or try and get your first job. And I think the key that I found the most is you are more likely to make a better first impression regardless of the initial conversation topic. If you go to meet with a customer and the first thing they ask you is hosting, and you go, I gotta defer to you, right? Like, if you're the one leading that meeting and you're weak in a particular area or you don't understand a particular area, that's where I would stress look for that advanced training or that basic overview training. It will just, a well-rounded, I think a well-rounded person at least knows what all those random acronyms can do. Maybe not knows too many details about them, but nevertheless, that's pretty much it. I have no idea how long that took, so maybe we have some time. I don't know what time.
Plenty of time for questions.
Okay, so questions. Again, this is my favorite part. Any questions? Yes.
As a new employee, you didn't have any problem with pushback from like the old guys that had been there for 20 years and were wondering who the hell this kid was?
I did. I continue to, because the second youngest person in our department is 33 years old or something like that, and I'm sitting as the 21-year-old. So yes, I did get a lot of pushback, and I think you get that kind of like, this is the new guy, what's he talking about, etc. What helped in all those occasions was backing it up or showing examples, showcasing reasons. And again, going back to that root problem that you were trying to solution in the first place. If you're looking at a solution, you're questioning it, you can't really go that far with that conversation because you're going against an established team, right? And you're coming in as the new guy questioning certain things. You need to be able to back up that questioning, and a lot of it comes down to just, in some cases it depends how you approach it too, but in a lot of cases just understanding where that came from. Was it a time constraint? Was it something political? There's a lot of stuff on our county website that I fought against so heavily to do certain things, and I lost because the person I was fighting against was an elected official. So it doesn't matter what I think.
What was an example of that?
So right now on our County site, we have a one of the top menu items says elected offices. It's just a quick listing of like the 9 elected offices that are run by a department head, like I was talking about earlier. So assessor, sheriff, treasurer, etc. These guys are elected department heads. The treasurer, initially we had that section as like an about tab, so it had more like resources and other stuff like that about Clark County. Should I name names? I don't know. Elections coming up.
We all know who they are.
Okay. So a particular individual wanted the elected offices to be a separate tab, and for them, a listing of the elected offices to be separate. And I fought against that because my point was, from a constituent example, first of all, if you had asked me if the Treasury Department, I wouldn't know, like I was a kid, right? So a lot of this seemed like from the user perspective, they're not going to know like, oh, I need something, in community development, I'll go to departments, but I need something under the assessor, I'll go to elected offices assessor. To me, that didn't seem like a logical flow to a typical end user going to a local government site. I lost that. There is an elected offices tab. I remedied it by not removing the links from the departments tab. So, and we have analytics on how many times departments assessors is clicked and how many times elected offices assessors is clicked, and it's clear that people think of it just as a department, not an elected office. So that's an example of, it's not that I was wrong, it's that he was elected.
So I'll phrase the question in 2 parts, or in 2 different ways. Directly, how does your organization handle, what's your knowledge, enterprise knowledge management strategy? The second way to phrase it is, what happens if you and a couple of other key people in your organization get hit by buses?
Yeah. Comes in 2 parts. The tribal knowledge is tried and true at the county. People have been there a long time, and documentation is very, very scarce. Part 2 is to address that problem. We did just hire a QA lead. Part of her task is also identifying standards for the software side of the house. So we are starting, or we have started, as of a couple months ago, a documentation repository, which was sorely overdue. People had kind of done their own thing, but I think the biggest issue was I think management never took it seriously, why it was important. Because again, they've been there for 20, 30 years, right? Like, what could ever happen? So that's our strategy going forward, is to have that documentation repository. And the other thing is rollouts of modules or new applications or stuff like that. A lot of times they are now subject to go through either a code review and or a change advisory board. Both of these entities require documentation and specifics. So that's a way of forcing, like, hey, you're rolling out this new custom module. We need to review this code as a technical team. We also need to inform change advisory board, because it's creating tables in the DB, or it's doing something where like things could go wrong, right? So those are methodologies that, and we are pushing for more of an ITIL organization. If you guys know what ITIL is,
Speak to that. I don't know what that is.
ITIL is basically a way of a technology department handling software and hardware changes, asset management, protocols for dealing. Basically, your entire IT structure templated. You'll obviously customize it for whatever works for you, but it's basically a framework that you could put your IT department on top of and say, these are network responsibilities, these are DA responsibilities, these are program responsibilities.
Cool.
This is how we'll work together.
Can you get certified?
You can get certified in ITIL. I think one of our devs, other people like on the hardware side or the PM side are certified ITIL. On the web team specifically, we have one person that's certified in training preparation for ITIL. This is the stupidest thing ever.
So Troy, 2 years ago, what did
Yeah.
you envision yourself doing 2 years from that time?
I was really gunning for wanting to do something like a creative agency, something that was focusing on, building these crazy cool websites for these crazy big companies, right? That's really what I wanted to do. I was very interested in front-end development as well as the PHP side of things, so I wanted to be in something like a PHP shop or some kind of some kind of web or digital agency, as a vendor, basically, as something that businesses came to help them. In this case, at the county, I'm one of those endpoints, right? At the county, we hire vendors. Vendors don't hire us, right? So
How much coding do you do today?
quite a bit. So constant rollout of Drupal modules and JavaScript tweaks, enhancements, stuff like that. A lot of things they start as support requests and turn into their own little tiny projects all the time. So a lot of those require custom code because it's either something that, well, it's good stuff. Because like one example is in the court, the courthouse right now for district court. There was a magnet board that showed for attorneys and I think even constituents. It showed what room each judge was in and stuff like that. It was a magnet board that was literally sitting there. I had a solo project of replacing that with a monitor, basically. So I used Drupal as a platform. There was a page that takes raw input from non-technical district court users. They input the data in terms of what judges in what room and stuff like that, and stored in Drupal, and then when that page is hit, serve it up as like a nice display and stuff like that. So this is an occasion that did take code. It took cohesion between desktop administration people as well, and a lot of stuff that we do is not isolated to ourselves as much as I think we would hope or that we would think, because obviously with that project, as soon as it comes up, there's a desktop site to it because you want to put a monitor there, you want to put a box there, that box that's going to auto restart when it loses power, a box is going to auto log in and auto launch a browser that auto connects to that web page, right? A lot of these things that I'm not even allowed to do in the organization. Other stuff is there is a lot of support that goes on. There's a lot of legacy applications that are written in .NET, desktop or web, and you kind of go in and tinker when things break, basically. Again, the documentation thing would help a lot because a lot of that stuff is a mess. I don't know if I answered your question. I don't.
No, you did.
Okay.
You did a good job.
All right.
One question. Meredith?
What about APIs? What do you provide, does Clark County, do they have a way of providing APIs for people like the real estate companies or something that want to connect to the database? Or, because that's the big thing. You want an API available to get to a site. You don't necessarily want to have a site if you're writing out there, but you still want the information from Clark County.
So there's a couple of things. So the GIS department with their Maps Online property and stuff like that, they have a kind of a package deal they give to subscribers where they expose data. I don't know if they actually offer a strict API. On the Drupal side of things, we could expose Drupal data to APIs, but a lot of the Drupal database is specific to, I think, web content and not information that someone would want. Obviously, Drupal provides feeds that developers could tap into and grab our content. The other thing is a lot of our APIs and our web services are for internal use only, and I think they're done some of these ways on purpose of connecting intra-business systems, and anytime we're integrating with an external system, a lot of times when you're a developer, API is like your first go-to. A lot of these big vendor companies, they don't like the API approach. They'd rather use their own custom-built solution or something like that. Sorry, getting back to your question, we really don't offer a lot of public APIs for you to consume information about constituents or anything like that. The closest thing we have would be Drupal feeds, and the Maps Online stuff, like I said, I don't know if an actual API is exposed with that subscriber package. GIS is its own entity, so we're not actually.
Going mobile with having a mobile app for Clark County?
Yeah, so there's been interesting conversations about that in general. One thing that I'm kind of pushing for is the ability for a constituent to actually register an account with the county. This would allow you, when you go to fill out a form, like there's a form we just put up for a temporary voter address change. And there's other forms for ADA requests, or just there's like 80 forms on our website. A lot of them ask for the same information, and a lot of people, same people, fill out a lot of those forms. So just having an account that you could pre-fill information would be great. The mobile app side, I think one of the things that got the naysay from the project management office and other entities was our site's responsive, right? I think that's something that got put on. I think what would be critical about going a route of actually having a specific mobile app would be what services are on that app that are not offered in another way.
The county site is mobile responsive, right?
Yes,
Okay.
very much so. There's one second. There is a county app that's like historic preservation something or another. That was a unique project for county constituents to download the app and see on like kind of a Google Map view of what the historic sites in that area was. That was a specific use case that they had, and they were able to pay for that or get the funding for that. Yes, and I know someone else had a
Meredith
question.
had a question.
So,
First of all, this is a great presentation with lots of information, and I can't wait to watch it again. So I'm glad it's being recorded, so it'll absorb a little bit more. But I'm really curious about your opportunity. Obviously, the internship at the county was a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Your final semester here. Is that something that you sought out yourself, or was that like part of the web development program that?
So the class co-op internship obviously was part of the degree program. Stay up. All right. It was something that one of my best friend's dad was actually at the time director of application services, and when I was over at their house, I was kind of yapping about what I wanted to do with my life, and he said that, hey, we're about to implement this Drupal project at the county. What about setting up your internship to go there or something like that? So that's kind of how the conversation started. So there was a little bit of a personal connection, but they would have been receptive to the idea anyway, I think. That opportunity specifically, it was kind of controversial in ways too, because the county had never really done internship programs, and there was a lot of head scratching of like, it's a free internship, it's through a college, what does this mean? Do we have to babysit this guy? Stuff like that. So there are a lot of people that I now work with that did not want me to, even after meeting me, did not want to just have to handle an intern at the county. Sorry, you want me to in front of the...
Is there people still don't want to see you there?
But I guess I should clarify my point. I don't think it was me personally. I think it was the idea of an intern.
Oh, okay.
And there's some people that have been there for a long time, not necessarily on the website, but just of the concept in general, that were like, hey, I've gotten the 4-year education, I've done this, I've gotten my certifications, and you want to bring in some college intern and just have me spill my knowledge. It's just like, the different mentality to knowledge sharing, right? I think the concern was, could an intern keep up? Would we have to babysit them? I think is really what the biggest concern is. It's always a busy time there, right? This project goes live, yay! Now we're 2 months behind on that one, So I think that was a lot of the concern, was resource time. Again, a big plus that I didn't take up a lot of the time I was there for my 5-6 hours a day, and I was.
Troy, we need to define a couple terms, because a lot of people here may not know the acronym VM. What's a VM?
A VM is a virtual machine. It is basically a segment of a supercomputer in our sense. It's a computer that has like 200 gigs of RAM and stuff like that, and basically you partition segments of those resources to spin up little servers. So they're virtual servers.
Drupal.
Drupal is a content management system similar to WordPress. It allows you to store object data, basically, like a page has a title, it has content, it has an author, that kind of stuff. It's a database object mentality of storing information for a website to dynamically serve it up to a user.
EDM.
Enterprise document management is storing, scan, store, retrieve in its simplest sense. Again, it's digitizing records, digitizing forms and permits and stuff like that, and managing it. Our ADM goes into enterprise workflows in terms of like, this constituent fills out this web form and it goes to some, like community planner employee who approves or denies, and then that routes an email to someone else, or it routes the document to someone else, do another ad hoc task on, etc.
Number of internal content authors at the county, and the number of daily or weekly or monthly users to the clark.wa.gov site.
Okay. About 60, well, including ad hoc stuff, there's probably like over 80 active web authors at the county. Again, these are people who, their full-time job is something else. They just kind of log into the website and do a certain task or update a certain section or something like that. Some of the departments have big sites, so they need more authors, etc. And in terms of traffic, it's monthly gets into the 100,000 sessions for sure, easily. I don't remember any of the details, but we're talking like I think it's almost 10,000 a week.
So just so you know, in the intro to programming class, Troy, we tried to spider clark.wa.gov.
Yeah, that was a dumb idea.
We got rejected. So you did a good thing, man.
Yeah. Don't spider our sites. That's the worst. Dennis. Sorry, I know Dennis had a question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just, okay, your story.
I was wondering what kind of scripting language you think is the most useful to you.
You mean like versus like server-side PHP versus JavaScript or stuff like that? Right. So I think they all are equally important. Not to avoid the question, but there are things that it depends on the problem you're solving. There's a lot of things that should be server-side. They absolutely should be server-side, and there's a lot of things that should be client-side. A lot of display logic and stuff like that should not. In another sense, it's knowing when not to use your scripting languages too, and making something static. They all play together in a very important harmony. I think, you could argue it both ways. Drupal is built off PHP. It's a giant PHP framework, essentially, that's database driven. And without it, our site couldn't, a CMS is a beautiful thing because it serves up documents, it stores it, and makes it easy for non-technical users to update the site. That's the whole point. However, it does have shortfalls in terms of the customizability and when you can hook into some kind of programmatic action you're performing. That's when you might turn to server-side and fix that thing after it gets loaded. The other thing, though, with server-side, you don't want to be dumping static content via server-side scripting. There's no reason for that. Or, client-side scripting. It should be static to begin with. It should be in the page content, it should be in a node template, etc. I don't know if I answered your question. They're
Who
very...
else has questions?
Okay, I want to go back to something you said. You've taken some, like WordPress, all this, and then you went to a whole new set of technologies.
Yes.
The thing is, though, by learning these other technologies, did that actually make it a little easier to learn these other technologies? Was the knowledge portable?
Yes, absolutely, in every way, shape, and form. I'm sorry. So was the knowledge portable from certain technologies to the other? Decline call. Yes, in the very funny sense. So the three I mentioned was I was doing Foundation, SAS, and WordPress. I ended up in Bootstrap, Less, and Drupal. Less and SAS are literally identical. It's like minor syntax tweaks. So yes, changeable. Other stuff too, like I think the foundation knowledge, using Foundation as a CSS framework was, you got the experience of what a framework does. That was your learning tool, right? And then you can now use any other CSS framework because you know what to expect. Even here too, the first programming language we touched in the web development thing was Python. I don't use Python on a day-to-day basis, but that's what we use to learn, how to code. And that's kind of that whole collection of knowledge and experience translated kind of to some of the ON-based stuff. I don't know where you came in, but I was talking about another software that I'm currently using and supporting at the county, and it's a database-driven system. So all of that knowledge absolutely transfers over. You get how it's working. So there's less of a learning curve for you in terms of learning that. And then you had a question, and then back to you.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a personal question, but like right now I'm at WSU and I'm on sort of the front end track, the Adobe suite and all the front end stuff. And but I know for a fact that I'll take any job I can get out there. So my question is, you back when you were a kid wanted to be a designer and design video games and stuff, and now you don't. Are you happy?
So, good question. So graphic design and graphic design and game development were the first two things. I followed the graphic design further, and I do graphic design now a little bit, so I'm happy with that. Web development, I never really thought that I would like it until I started doing it, so I'm very happy with that. Game development, I am sad about. I did try and do some game development off to the side with a little engine called Unity. A very complex engine to try and learn in your spare time. So, yes, I'm happy. I wish there was more time in the day. No, there's more I want to do. Question?
I was curious, being a government site, there's a big issue of security. I imagine you guys probably get probed a lot and things like that. And you have tools to deal with that, but is that an ongoing topic? I mean, that's something, because you always hear about some web, this city got their web page, defaced with somebody that was TikTok, I don't know, whatever,
So,
where that's going, I mean, you see being more of a problem in the government web page.
So the security topic comes up quite a lot. I think in response to that, yes, we do need to take it more seriously, and there's specific security positions now being offered at the county that there never has been before for IT. In terms of our security, aside from the basic things of SSL and other stuff like that, we do use, or we're on the full update stream of Drupal 7, so every time there's a security patch, we have that loaded on our site as well within a week or so. So that's the continuation there. There are module security loopholes, because when you have a contributed module that you've taken and changed, there could be core code in that module that was written in an unsecure way, right? So we take those obviously very seriously. We get updates about those. A lot of the server-side stuff, that's, I think, one of the benefits of having cloud-hosted service provider is, A, it's not on us, and B, we're outsourcing that to experts in cloud hosting security, right? So it's not our responsibility to have those skills in-house. I think that's a big part of security, is knowing when you're out of your depth. The county was hosting its own site until we went to Drupal, and that's when it became a big deal, because now all of a sudden it's database driven. And we don't want things like SQL injection possible. SQL injection isn't possible if there's no SQL server behind it. So as soon as there was a SQL server behind it, actually it's MariaDB, but anyway, get my point. Then it was a big deal of security. A lot of it too, the physical security, and just knowing who has access to your stuff as well. And the other thing, no, do not forget. What was it? It's gone. Sorry. I had another really good point, I promise.
So we have a few more minutes, and Bilal or Matthew or Inkyu or Willis, any questions for Troy? Willis.
What were some of the factors that were behind the county's choice of Drupal as opposed to others?
It's actually a really funny story. Needed to be CMS. It had to be accessible for non-technical users to update it, right? So it had to be a CMS. There were several of the leading CMSs were considered. WordPress was considered and very quickly ousted because of the site's complexity. And it really came down to Joomla and Drupal. They were the big two. It was going to be one of those two, and the at the time web team lead was playing with both. And he was downloading all these modules and stuff like that. And the Joomla modules that he was developing, the developers of those modules have like automated emails, say like, hey, do you like my module? Send me $5, buy me a beer and stuff like that. And the web team lead was getting hammered with these emails, and he was like, screw that, we're going with Drupal. That's why we're on Drupal.
So that's a good competitive thing if you want to do in your business model canvases. Send emails from everyone. Who else? And then we'll wrap it up.
You mentioned MariaDB. Can you, as opposed to SQL, can you make a distinction between those two and tell us more about that?
Yeah, good question. So MariaDB is so our fabled LAMP stack, right? It was so popular because it was all free technologies. Oracle bought MySQL. Now there are heavy licensing for enterprise MySQL servers. The MariaDB is made by some of the same group that made MySQL. It's very much similar. It's just continuing that open source mentality.
Did you consider using another DB technology like a graph database or an object database?
No, I think, and I'm 99.738% sure Drupal must run on a MySQL or a SQL database. It must be structured. Query language must be structured. It's all in structure.
One more question. Who's got that last question? Come on, somebody.
Yes, new face.
Mac or Windows?
It's government, man. It's all Windows.
Where are you going to be
Oh, now we
2
got
years from now?
Where am I going to be
What's
2
your
years from now?
plan? Like, do you think you want to stick out with the government or do your freelance stuff?
Do you want us to turn the camera?
So I'll still be at the county. You need to stay at the county 5 years to get vested in the PERS retirement platform. So at least 5 years. I'll still be at the county. Hopefully in a little bit higher of a position too. Yes.
One more.
Yes, I am.
Knowing what you know now.
What's that?
Knowing what you know now,
Yes.
that's the position that you're in, what would you have liked to have seen Clark instruct you in that could have helped you in the position that you are now?
So, good question, and I think part of the reason I'm excited you asked that is as of the last meeting or before, I'm part of the Clark Web Development Advisory Board here, so I can actually share that with some of the.
All right.
Thank you. And a lot of it was, like when I took it, there was no mention of Drupal. There was no mention of, there's just, and it goes back to kind of what Dennis says, like there was a learning, platform that Clark worked on. One of the recommendations I've made a couple of times, and I have been told that those changes have already been being made, is the cohesiveness between technologies. Not learning technologies as a silo, but learning how they really work with all the other technologies combined. So that's one of the things that I think could be, or that I would say I was a little bit underprepared for, is like kind of some of those things. When is something should be server side versus client side versus static? Those kind of questions. And a lot of it is, I talked about like the basic versus advanced. You start with this triangle of getting the basic knowledge and funneling out to more advanced. It's hard to touch on a lot of those advanced points in the classroom environment because you have a lot of different learning speeds, and we're covering a lot of stuff in this program. Actually, it's actually quite impressive and kind of awesome that it's like for the web development specifically, it's focused on it. And I think a lot of the stuff that helped my preparation was kind of some of the stuff I mentioned of like finishing those books. It gets to like chapter 7 out of 13. Well, there's more stuff there, right? And building side projects and stuff like that. I think, and those shouldn't be, I don't know that they should be forced, as more homework or more projects or anything like that, but those are ways that I saw like I wanted more knowledge of something or I was excited about it, so I just went and found an example of it or just went and did it. I hope to give more structured feedback to the advisory board at our next meeting.
But look at you now.
Look at me now.
Look at me now. So, Bilal, did you have a question? And then we're going to...
Not really. I'm enjoying all the...
Okay. Well, how about a big round of applause for Troy?